Thank you guys for tuning into the channel. You're here with Nate. This is Crossbeats Production, and I want to show you guys how I get more analog-ish kind of vibes to my mix, and how I get the width, depth, and clarity in the mix, even without using analog gear as well. So let's get straight into this video. I hope you guys enjoy this. If you do, remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get the next videos that come out on this channel. Let's go straight into the video. So we're here on the screen and I'm showing you guys how to achieve the analog kind of vibe in your mix, even without having that analog gear. So I've got a 500 series compressor. This is running through pipeline, coming back into my mix, and it's creating a bit of depth, compression, and analog, kind of vibes to it. But I'm going to disengage that in just a minute after I show you what it sounds like first with it on, and then I'll show you guys how to achieve that kind of same result without having that piece of gear in your mix, just having the stock stuff and free plugins as well. So let's get straight into it. I'll play the track. Let's go. Now, hopefully you guys can kind of tell what's happening here. It's nothing spectacular, that's for sure. It's just something that kind of creates more of a vibe. It glues the mix together. It just is more analog, in my opinion. I guess, the track would be perfectly fine without that compressor on there. There would be nothing wrong with it. But if you just want to get some more vibes to your track, this is the way that you can achieve it. So let's go without the compressor. I'm going to disengage that because I don't want that on here anymore. I want to do this for free. This is the deal, man. So I want to get this imager. This is the actual paid version. So Ozone, this is Ozone 8. They have an imager that allows you to split the bands, so you can actually use 4 bands of imaging. We're going to get rid of that because I don't want that on here anymore either. What we're going to do is we're going to leave this EQ on here. So the EQ is just creating an EQ curve. There's nothing spectacular about that. Any EQ can do this, so there's no big real reason to get rid of that. And then I've got a limiter at the end of the final chain here. So let's go. We'll figure out how we can get some width and depth and clarity into the mix. First off, I'll introduce to you a plugin that is kind of a cool plugin that's been released not that long ago. It's the Ozone Imager 2, and this is for whatever reason not showing what I want it to. There we go. So the Imager 2 is a plugin that allows you to create width in your channel. Whatever you're mixing or mastering, you can use this to create width in the entire sound that you're working on. So the Ozone Imager, actually, as I showed you before, has a paid version which you can get that does 4 bands. So that's a lot more control that you have over the mix. But if you don't want to pay the money for that and you want to use a free plugin, they actually let you use this plugin here for free. So this is the Imager 2. And you can download off that website. And I'll leave the link actually down in the description. I don't have anything to do with these guys. It's just I want to show you guys how to do this and show you how to get a free plugin that can allow you some more depth and clarity in the mix. So, I'm using this plugin on the Final Master, and I've got a few other plugins that create more depth or width in a track. That's one of them. The widener is, or I should say the wider is another one. Polyverse, it's Infected Mushroom Wider. This is a free plugin as well. So go check that out. It's worth checking out. Just look it up on the internet. You'll see it. Microshift is not. That's by Sound Toys. That's something that you have to actually pay for as well. But on the actual hi-hat that I've got here, I'll just play it without it so you can kind of hear what the hi-hat's doing and then with it. So you can kind of hear, just with the wider plugin, it's actually really helping the hi-hat kind of spread out in the mix. So we're looking at the Imager as a whole on the mix, and I'm going to play the whole track with the Imager off and then on. You can kind of hear the mix kind of spread a little bit out. Sometimes you can use this one plugin on the whole mix and it would have no issue. As far as the phase on the low end stuff, you may want to be careful with that because, you know, with phase, especially with the low end, if you're, you know, trying to get your record on a vinyl or anything like that, not that you would generally, but if it does ever happen, then you'd want to have the correct phase and the low end to be a mono right at the base of the low end so that it can actually write to the vinyl and not have problems. But we're not talking about vinyl right now. We're just talking about some nice clarity and depth in the mix. So you could totally get this plugin, throw it on your final bus and get a bit more depth or clarity. Also, the same thing could be true if you had too much width in your mix. You'd probably want to go back and fix it in the mix. But if you did, or you're mastering for somebody else, you can get this width and then just pull it all the way down or pull it somewhat down so that it, you know, brings the track in a bit more as well. So that's just a way of working with the tracks. I'll just show you what I'm talking about. So vice versa, it kind of works in the way that it either reduces, you know, the track by pulling it down, or it increases the width of the track by putting it up. We'll enable the compressor because we had a compressor before, and now we're just ignoring that if I don't talk about it. So let's put this compressor on here and have a listen to the track. So if you listen to the kick and the snare, that's mainly where it's affecting it because they're the highest transients in the mix and it's pulling the peaks down there. And we've got a 26 millisecond attack and a 156 millisecond release. Nothing specific to anything there. I just purely picked those by listening to the track. So I was going for that kind of vibe. We've got 2 dB of ratio there, so 2 dB of compression and fully wet, nothing else happening. That's all good. And it's a look ahead function. And we're not stereo linking the track either because I want to keep, you know, the differences on the channels to be available inside of the compressor. I don't want it to compress both of them at the same time equally. So the Imager, this is going to be cool here. I'm going to show you guys how to get more of just the top end frequencies, you know, widening happening there. And this is the little button that you hit here. So it's a little circle, looks like a, I don't know, like a dial or something. It's called the channel editor. If you hit that, it brings this little tab up here and it brings this little thing that you can show all these kind of macros and stuff, but I'm going to hit this little routing section here. Now, the routing is available to everybody in Studio One. If you have another DAW, I think there's other plugins or things you can do to allow this plugin to work like this, but it's specifically easy to do in Studio One. So the frequency split, it normally comes on normal, so when you click this, you'll have this splitter thing here. You have to actually drag a splitter down to get it to function, and then it allows the channel to split. And what you do here is I'll just actually remove that and I'll show you on this one. So I'm going to get this, I'm going to move the Imager into the right-hand side of the splitter, and then I'll go back to the splitter again. And this is on normal, so normal is just it's splitting the two channels, so it's going left and right. So what we want to do is split the frequency though. So I've got this frequency set to 165. Now you can do this any way you want on the frequency band, but 165 kind of sounded about right to me. If you're listening on headphones as well, this will be a lot easier to hear, but what we're going to do here is we're going to widen the high-end frequencies. We're leaving all this in blue behind, so everything on this side of the channel, that's the blue side. Everything that's not highlighted here is the right-hand side, and that's where it's going through the Imager, and it's allowing the channel to be split. So that's a pretty neat feature inside Studio One that allows you to do that. So let's hit play. You can kind of hear when I engaged it and disengaged it, there was a little bit more depth and width to the high-end frequencies, and that's what I'm going for in this mix. That's kind of what I want to achieve. You would normally get something similar kind of sounding if you're using like analog gear, especially if you're using like a summing box or something like that. It may not give you, you know, exactly the same width or depth or whatever, but it's just the well-known, I guess, analog gear kind of depth that you get. So this is something you can do without having any of that. You just use your stock compressor, you use a free plugin called the Imager 2, and then it gives you all that, you know, extra stuff in your mix that you just really couldn't achieve without it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, remember to like, subscribe to the channel. I love you guys, and peace.